In early 2014, it was being reported that Warner Brothers was fast-tracking reboot/sequels to both Gremlins and The Goonies. In a recent interview with Screencrush, director Chris Columbus, who wrote both the original Gremlins and Goonies, said that he was involved with WB heavily developing both new projects. However, things have been slow and that audiences shouldn't expect either film too quickly. Earlier this year, producer Frank Marshall stated that an actual story for the new film still had not been developed, and that in terms of Goonies, despite some rumors that the new film would be a sequel and focus on the kids of the old cast, it would indeed not be a sequel and rather a reboot. Schnepp, are we ever going to see a new Goonies or Gremlins movie?
Well, I certainly hope so. I finally saw The Goonies after having not ever seen it. I saw it this year. And I loved it. Everyone was like, that's one of those when you're like, you haven't seen The Goonies, or like, you haven't seen that. If you say a movie and you're like, nah, I haven't seen that yet, people are like, what? You haven't seen that movie? That was The Goonies for me.
Yeah.
So I finally saw it and I loved it. It's a great film. I remember reading earlier this year that Donner was saying, hey, we're going to develop it and bring the whole cast back, and they're going to be the parents of the new Goonies. And I thought that was a great idea. Rebooting it, I guess they could do that too. I mean, but I like the idea of like trying to retain some of the old Goonies. So hopefully they do a mixture of it and don't have to get too weird about like retconning or whatnot. But I'd love to see Goonies or Gremlins as a remake. I mean, a reboot. I think Gremlins is a great idea. It's a really fun thing. And now with like, you know, what we had with practical effects back then, what we can do with CG, it could just be bonkers. So
yeah, I'm honestly, I don't know that this Goonies one is ever going to happen. I mean, I was intrigued by the idea at first about the idea of the original cast back, but as parents, and now this new movie focuses on their kids.
Yeah.
I was intrigued by it, although I think at the time I said, and I still believe, I'd be more interested just about the original cast getting back together again,
right,
and finding out there, what was it? One-Eyed Willie was the name of the pirate. Finding out there was another treasure for One-Eyed, or something like that, and they have to get back together. They're in totally different places in their lives now. Right. They probably all have kids. I mean, Brolin maybe has a grandkid at this point.
Actually, Chunk is like a lawyer, and he's all extra thin and ripped now. He's
oh
like,
yeah,
he's like an
amazing.
entertainment lawyer. Yeah,
that would be amazing to see. The idea of a reboot of Goonies, I'll be on board for it, but I still, you know, despite all the fact, remember, over a year ago, they're saying, oh, it's being fast-tracked. Guess what? We're over a year later now and nothing has happened.
What do they call that? Slow track.
Yeah, it's slow track. We're putting on the molasses train and nothing has happened so far. I'm kind of expecting nothing. Now, with Gremlins, I believe that is a movie that is even more ripe for a remake and a reboot than, say, Goonies was. What you can do now, look, we talked about this about a year ago, but it's true. What you'd have to really be careful with is to have a nice mix of CG and practical puppet effects. Because part of the charm of that original is, you know, Gizmo as a physical puppet made everybody fall in love with that little creature, right? So you do that and then utilize CG for all the movement and action and stuff like that, much like they did with Yoda, I think in the first prequel, where you use puppet in the close-up scenes, and when he's got to do movement and action, then you go CG, and with today's technology, it's going to look a lot better than it did in The Phantom Menace. Right. So you do that, it can work really well. And because of that, I think the chances are greater. If it was going to be one or the other, and it might be both, it might be neither, but if it was going to be one or the other, I think the chances are greater that a Gremlins reboot will happen than a Goonies reboot. For whatever reason, every time I hear about the Goonies, you know, requel, you know, that's what they're calling it, a requel or a reboot or whatever, I just get more and more depressed. With Gremlins, I still think the chances are there. Right. So we'll see how that kind of turns out. Ashley, let me ask you. Yes, Goonies, Gremlins, both classics. If remakes both came out tomorrow, which one are you lining up to go see?
I was actually thinking of, you know how people send in that question all the time of what are some movies that are untouchable? I think that these two movies are those kinds of movies. I just cannot imagine like a reboot or a remake of either of these. I don't know, like their kids. Who would be cast as their kids? It would be like distracting to me. It wouldn't really be like those characters to me.
What about the newest YouTube celebrities? They could be the kids.
Oh, perfect. Let's just go to VidCon and cast them.
VidCon, you should be there now. You should be casting all the brand new Goonies. I think Gremlins, though, remember, Gremlins had the next batch. They had a sequel.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
That's true. Which had its benefit. It had its upside. The new batch had its upside. I still remember, I think there was the one evil gremlin that was dressed up like a therapist, had the glasses on and everything. Those things killed me.
I would love to see, I know Joe Dante is not doing that much now, but they should bring him in to do, or at least be somehow on board.
Didn't they say he was like I think like last April, it was like April 2014 when the news came out that they were moving ahead, fast tracking all this
Right.
stuff. And I believe they said they had set up a brain trust. And I believe they said Joe Dante was one of those guys.
I remember
like
reading
Chris
that.
Columbus was one of them. I think Joe Dante was one of them. One of the studio heads was one of them. And apparently none of them could get some free time to make these things
Yeah,
happen.
they're on this extra slow track Amtrak, the non-speedy train.
It's like they all get together and go, you know, we could talk about Gremlins. Like they all fly in to the same time. They all fly in, sit down in a room and go, you know, we could talk about Gremlins and Goonies. Or we could watch this sweet porn and drink some drink some bud.
Oh, can I get that extra deluxe tuna sandwich with the potato salad the same way that you made it the last time we had this meeting 6 months ago?
And then all of a sudden 3 hours pass. It's like, oh, we'll get to Gremlins next time.
Next 6 months from now.